Hello and welcome to TraceCloud. In this brief video to show you how simple and easy to use TraceCloud is, I'll be walking you through a kind of a 10-minute video within which we should be able to add comments to requirements, invite other people to the project, submit requirements for approval, and track the approval status, and generally see how collaboration works in TraceCloud. So with that, let's jump right in. I have a project called a demo. Inviting people to this project is as simple as clicking on the invite others button and then adding their email ID. Let's say I want to invite Sammy at tracecloud.com and to the role of an administrator, and I invite them. If they already are members of this project, members of the TraceCloud system, they will automatically be added. If they're not, they'll get an email, and pretty soon, when they create an account with the same email ID, they will show up as administrators on this project or any other role that you have invited them to. Now that I have requirements in TraceCloud, I should be able to go in here and say, you know what, I really want to add a comment to this requirement, right? So I would say needs more parity, right? When I add a comment, a couple of things happen. And the first thing is all the stakeholders of this requirement are notified of that comment. Now, we don't want to spam people, so there's a digest email that goes out. But more importantly, for the life of this requirement, this comment will always show up out here, right? So that way, as different people add comments to these requirements, you should be able to go and say, well, show me what has happened to that requirement to define why it became, how it evolved over a period of time, or simply just show me all the comments that have happened on this folder since I've kind of gone on a vacation and come back 10 days later, right? So that's one way to kind of keep track of what's happening. Now, the second thing is when you invite people to this project, two things happen. Let me go to the configure project to show you more in detail. Every project is very highly configurable. If you want, you can kind of create your own requirement types and attributes, and more importantly, you can create roles. And a role is nothing but kind of a collection of permissions. So in this case, I can go and create a new role called business requirement approver, right? Or pick any existing role and say, well, members of this role, which is Albert and Sammy, right? If I want, I can add additional users here. Members of this role can do the following things for these requirements in different folders. So you have very granular access process for different members of different roles. Now, going back to the object types, what I really want to do is when I look at my business requirements, I think that they are important enough that when people modify them, I want to get them approved by some people. So I can go here and say, I really want to enable my approval workflow for business requirements. And I want people to be nagged pretty much every day to be approving them if they are in the approval cycle for business requirements. So I've defined my business requirements are eligible for approval. Let me do that to my functional requirements also. So let's say I have my functional requirements. I'm going to say functional requirements also need approval, and I want people to be reminded every day of the week. And from a roles perspective, you can see that everybody who is an administrator has the approval permission on all the business requirements and functional requirements. At this point, when I go back to my project, you can see that every time I look at a business requirement, I have this new button called approval status. Or when I open the requirement up, you'll actually see a button called submit for approval because it is in a draft state. And I can click on this button and actually see who the approvers are. Okay, those are the two approvers. And I can go ahead and say, you know what, I want to submit this for approval. The system knows that these two are the approvers. One is Albert, the other is Sammy. Since I am Albert, I can go here and say, you know what, I'll approve it. And here are my comments, right? Great idea. I want to be the first. Okay, and I can approve it, right? That's pretty much. And the system keeps track of the fact that I have approved it and it is still pending for Sammy, and will keep on reminding her on a regular basis. If I wanted to, I could also hit the remind button and say, please go ahead and approve. Similarly, for my functional requirements, you can actually see that there is a submit for approval button, right? I can submit them for approval. And since I'm one of the approvers, I can go here and say, you know what, this one need more info, and let's say, you know what, I want to reject this for the time being. So there's the cycle that is built in here. The system is keeping track of whether I approved it or rejected it, and there is a project change log button for every single requirement, keeps track of every single change that has happened to this requirement. And now, assuming a requirement has gotten completely approved, if I were to go and modify this requirement and say, you know what, not 100 meters, but it should be 1,000 meters, a couple of things happen. One is, of course, it's in a new version now because I made a big change to the requirement definition itself. And more importantly, it has gone back in the approval cycle back to the draft status because now we are talking about a new version of the requirement and it should be submitted for approval again. Okay. The system comes in with a built-in ability to keep track of things, and I want to spend a few minutes on that. The first thing is every single user gets their own, I would say, metrics dashboard. Tells you of all the projects in this, of all the requirements in this project, what are the trouble spot from a traceability perspective, how many requirements are there that you own, that way you are the owner, that have different trouble spots, and how many requirements are pending your approval, and how many of your requirements are pending approval from other people. This dashboard is pretty much driven by, as I mentioned earlier, every single requirement has this concept of an owner. Right? If I were to assign this to Sammy, then it will go into her count. At the same time, when you're looking at a folder, you should say, you know what, let me look at the folder metrics. That is, irrespective of what is happening in the entire project, I really want to focus on this folder and I want to see how many things are in different parts of approval cycle and how many are from in different phases of traceability and testing. So the idea here is there exists a variety of dashboards where you don't have to build these complex reports, and the system in a very simple way is able to show you where the pitfalls are. Like for example, I know in this folder some requirements require approval. I know some requirements have a suspect issue from a traceability perspective, and I have some dangling and orphan requirements. So I should be able to click on that, get to the requirement, and take care of it without having to build extremely complex reports. Similarly, I should be able to go here and say, for all the things where I am the owner, just show me the trouble spots and how many requirements are pending my approval. I can look at that and approve them. Or how many of my requirements are pending other people's approval. I can follow up on them, right? So the idea here is you have this very simple to use dashboards that are there depending on what hat you're wearing that shows you what's happening. Here is the final one. In your organization today, you probably have business requirements, functional requirements. Some of them will probably be connecting up to your release. In TraceCloud, what you can do is you can actually get the metrics for that release. That tells you how that logical grouping of work is performing and where the hotspots are. So you can focus in, narrow down, and fix that issue. So if you're the release manager, you can confidently say that this release is coming along in a very healthy way, or here are the trouble spots, or here are the changes that are not addressed. And so you're never surprised by what's happening in your particular release. Hope that helps. If you have any questions, please reach out to us at support@tracecloud.com. Thank you.